Uncertainty in Ukraine today as Russia made two overtures to ease tensions around the country, reporting a pullback of troops near its neighbor and welcoming talks with the West. The scenes at Maidan Square in Kiev and Mariupol seaport look peaceful, but the U.S. and its allies said they needed evidence of the troop movements and that the threat of a Russian invasion still looms. Yesterday, there were signs of hope that Europe might avoid war following weeks of escalating east-west tensions as Moscow amassed around 150,000 troops on three sides of Ukraine and held massive military drills. U.S. President Joe Biden says there are questions surrounding Russia's claim that it has removed troops from the Ukrainian border.
And the fact remains, right now, Russia has more than 150,000 troops encircling Ukraine and Belarus and along Ukraine's border. An invasion remains distinctly possible. That's why I've asked several times that all Americans in Ukraine leave now before it's too late to leave safely. It is why we have temporarily relocated our embassy from Kyiv to Lviv in Western Ukraine.
Aurel Braun is professor of political science and international relations at the University of Toronto and associate at the Davis Center, Harvard University. And he joins us live now on CP24 Breakfast. Professor Braun, thank you for joining us this morning to talk about this. So we've heard Russian President Vladimir Putin say that he does not want a war and that he would rely on negotiations, yet the evidence points in the other direction. We've seen troops gone from 130,000 to 150,000. They are sending medical equipment, military equipment, and even blood. All signs point to a very real threat of an invasion. So what is your take on this recent kind of mix in dialogue with him saying that we're going to pull back, but the U.S. saying there's no evidence of that yet?
When Vladimir Putin says to the West that I'm willing to negotiate, what he's saying is that we are going to negotiate while I hold a gun to your head. That he is going to maintain the capacity to move very quickly, to have an invasion from a standing start position, which would make defense far more difficult. They are conducting maneuvers in the Black Sea, which at the moment basically have denied maritime access to Ukraine. A lot of the trade Ukraine conducts is by sea. There have been cyber attacks against government offices, against two of the main banks in Ukraine. So there's a psychological warfare going on, cyber warfare going on. There is that capacity. What we don't know is what the exact intent is of Mr. Putin. We can only speculate.
Well, that's a very interesting take. Professor, I'd like to get your take now on why you think the Trudeau government kind of dragged its heels in sending lethal weapons to Ukraine when the other NATO countries did so almost immediately.
Not all of them did. Certainly Germany has not been very helpful in this instance, but some other countries have. Britain stepped up. United States finally began to send more weapons. It is a trickle, but it's significant. So it is good that Canada finally decided to send weapons to Ukraine to better allow Ukraine to defend itself. The Ukrainian government has never asked any Western country to send troops to fight for their independence, but they ask for weapons so they can defend their independence themselves. And what Canada is doing is sending a powerful message. The weapons that we're sending over, defensive weapons, are limited in terms of lethality, but the symbolism is important because what it sends the message to Russia is that a country that has been so reticent to help out in terms of providing weapons finally has come to the conclusion that deterrence needs to be restored. And this is what we have to look at in the longer term, that if we manage to resolve this problem at the moment, these threats from Russia, without an actual war, that is to be welcomed. But we need to recognize that deterrence has failed. This should never have come about. And what happens in the future? Will this be a frozen conflict that Russia just can unfreeze at will and continue basically to threaten or to blackmail Ukraine and the West?
Well, certainly still so much to follow in this situation. Professor Aurel Braun, thank you so much for joining us this morning on CP24 Breakfast to talk about this. Have a good day.
You're welcome.